Well, a year after Canadian Hockey League players were deemed eligible to play in college, that impact now is already being felt everywhere in the development pipeline, all the way to reach the NHL. So let's bring in Front Office Sports' Meredith Turits for more. So Meredith, tell us a little bit more about how we got to this rule change before we get to how it's impacted the hockey life.
Sure. So there was an antitrust lawsuit brought against the NCAA that said Canadian Hockey League players who are major junior players should be eligible to play in the NCAA in college hockey before they were deemed ineligible because they received a stipend which classified them as pros. The lawsuit was settled last November, and then starting August, these players were able to join NCAA rosters, among them most of the top Division I programs.
Okay, so now this has been in effect for a year now. What have we sort of learned, and how has this maybe helped or maybe even hindered players in their development to get to the NHL?
So it's been really interesting because it used to sort of be an us versus them situation. You played in the CHL or you played in college hockey. You can't do both. And all of a sudden, there is not this adversarial relationship between the leagues. There's this new idea that maybe you go through the CHL, max out your eligibility there, and then go into college hockey. And one thing that's very interesting is the style of play is really different. So in the CHL, which you can play in from 16 to 20, it is a 64 to 68 game season. It's pretty grueling like the NHL season is, whereas college hockey is 34 games for Division I. So it's a much different setup, lots of breaks, especially compared to the CHL. That said, it's an older league, it's much more physical, it's more developed and kind of reflects NHL style play. So you really had to choose between the two, and now you can potentially experience both.
So has this new rule hurt the CHL, given the fact that all their players now would be eligible to come play in the NCAA, or have they not seen any sort of difference at all?
So that was really the worry when the change came into effect. The departure of Gavin McKenna from the WHL's Medicine Hat Tigers, he went to Penn State, kind of set out alarm bells saying, you know, the CHL is going to hemorrhage talent and they're going to lose all these players. And that was sort of the prevailing narrative. And then all of a sudden, as we really watched the movement of players since those commitments, only 19 players with CHL eligibility remaining for their 17, 18, and 19 seasons actually made the jump to the NCAA. And the other piece of it is the CHL has started to see an influx of talent from some of the other junior leagues. So that includes the USHL, the BCHL, and the AJHL. So all of a sudden, this talent that was at the junior level is now moving into major junior. And so we're seeing the CHL actually strengthen in ways we didn't necessarily expect.
All right, so you mentioned Gavin McKenna and all this. He's presumably the #1 pick in the upcoming NHL draft. You mentioned, going to Penn State, getting this big NIL deal. Did this help his draft prospects? Is he now solidified now as pretty much going to be a surefire thing at #1, or did him moving to the NCAA change his draft stock?
It is a super interesting question and one of the most active discussions in the hockey community right now. So as a WHL player, McKenna set tons of records. His play was compared to Connor McDavid in a lot of ways. And now in the NCAA with the Big Ten's Penn State, he's producing. He's doing a really good job, but he hasn't had that stratospheric leap that everybody really expected. Through 14 games, he has 15 points, and his plus minus is -7. So he's producing. We're seeing a great player develop, but it hasn't been this plug and play transition. So he's actually being challenged for the first overall spot. The name that's in that mix is Keaton Verhoff, who left Victoria Royals of the WHL to go to the NCHC's North Dakota.
Interesting. So let's just compare this to the NHL draft to, say, the NFL draft or the NBA draft. You have the NBA draft, players play maybe a year or two in college. Some of them go to other leagues like overtime or something else to get into the NBA draft. But it seems like in the NHL, now you're having guys stay in college even longer before they now come to the NHL draft.
Yeah, it's not this scramble like in college basketball where you just want to get out of the NCAA to the pros as quick as possible. There are some players, Macklin Celebrini, the #1 overall pick in 2024, who only played a year with Boston College. There are players, Brady Tkachuk, Jack Eichel, Adam Fantilli, who all only played their freshman year. And then you look at other players who really stay 3, even 4 years to max out their eligibility and develop. Last year's Hobie Baker winner, Isaac Howard, spent 3 years in the NCAA, most recently with Michigan State. And he really developed, and you want to see the development in these players and not necessarily just like running from the NCAA as soon as possible.
So it seems like the big question is then what took this so long for this rule to go into effect?
Some of it was the pro rules about earning. If you earn anything, obviously you're classified as a pro. And so, part of it was kind of working around those laws, but the antitrust lawsuit is really what pushed this over the edge.
And given now that NIL, players in hockey can make this as well, has this improved their NIL, how much money they're making in NIL now?
Absolutely. College hockey was just not part of the equation before. And for some schools who don't have these massive NIL budgets, it's really not going to be. But a conference like the Big Ten, where Gavin McKenna went, they have lots of money to play with. And so they are able to secure some of those players, but also these players are able to make money. And that's a brand new frontier and a really appealing way to think about, how do I make my choices? Is college hockey right for me?
So what are you still watching with this story? Now a year going by with this in terms of the next future timeline for this?
There are a lot of different things. I think the CHL particularly is watching what the attrition really looks like. Are they losing more players than they're bringing in from a league like the USHL? I think we're looking at kind of what that relationship between college hockey and major junior hockey is. Are these athletes going to max out both eligibilities and really use one as a stepping stone to another? The other question is for these junior leagues like the United States Hockey League, they're all of a sudden losing tons of talent. So the question is, are they going to get watered down, or is there some solution where maybe the USHL gets pulled under the CHL umbrella, which is something that the leagues are rumored to be talking about?
Wow, this is all really fascinating. You could read Meredith's entire story on this over at frontofficesports.com. Meredith, thank you so much. We have a lot more show headed your way right after this very quick break. Don't go anywhere.